So to kick off this afternoon's program, I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Lena Nour. Lena Nour is an advocate for women's empowerment, a public servant, and the daughter of Mr. Nour Imam and Ms. Zamzam Adam, two prominent Ethiopian community leaders in the DMV area. Currently, Lena works as an analyst for the U.S. Government Accountability Office, a nonpartisan federal agency where she uses tools for program evaluation to examine the effectiveness of taxpayer-funded programs. Lena has found her passion at the cross-section of community engagement and evidence-based policymaking. Lena has experience in the nonprofit state and federal government, which ranges from recruitment and retention to social advocacy. Lena is a certified project management professional and has written numerous publications on topics ranging from linguistic discrimination to the impacts of policy changes. Please join me to welcome Lena Nour.
እንዴት ዋላችሁ? እንዴት ናችሁ? እንኳን ለአምስተኛ ዓመት ድንቅነሽ በዓል አደረሳችሁ። መጀመሪያ እኔ ቋንቋ ችግር አለኝ፣ ስለዚህ በእንግሊዝኛ እናገራለሁ። ይቅርታ አድርጉልኝ። I wanted to take this opportunity to again welcome you all to the 5th annual Dinknesh celebration, an afternoon to celebrate the inspiration and empowerment of women and their achievements in the Ethiopian American diaspora community. Please join me in giving a round of applause to Halima and all of the organizers for putting together this wonderful event. My name is Lena Nour, and while Dr. Rania read a very generous introduction of me, I am also a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a proud Ethiopian American. I'd like to spend some time today talking to you all about my experiences and the importance of resiliency. While Dinknesh comes from the word astanaki, which means phenomenal, I think one quality that I see in all the women that will be honored today is resiliency. Resiliency is the ability to bounce back from setbacks, adapt to adversity, and overcome challenges. And I'm sure if we reflect on all of our personal lives, especially in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, we will realize that we are all resilient women. In order to tell you a little bit about myself, I'd like to go back and tell you about my grandfather. Haji Adam Ahmed Saeed, may God have mercy on his soul. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, a leader, and a firm believer in girls' education. My grandfather had 8 daughters, one of whom is sitting here with us today, my mother, and she exemplified this by always prioritizing her education. I remember growing up and watching my mother spend countless hours studying on her computer for her pharmacy degree after she had come from a full day of work. And seeing both of my parents pursue their postgraduate studies also encouraged me to do the same, where I was able to graduate from college here in Virginia at George Mason University and pursue a master's degree of public policy at George Washington University. And reflecting on my grandfather's choice to instill the importance of education, I think about how fortunate that I am that the value of education was planted in me so early on, and how I am a byproduct of that one decision. And as we all know, many girls in Ethiopia face several barriers in pursuing an education. And according to the United Nations, although most children enroll in school, many do not continue, with 33.1% of students making it to secondary school. Many families in Ethiopia struggle with poverty, and with rising education costs to cover school fees and supplies, we often see lower enrollment rates for girls as opposed to boys. and inadequate hygiene facilities can make it difficult for girls to attend schools some days out of the month, resulting in them falling behind. These sentiments are also true for many girls around the world, which reminds us how fortunate that we are to be here in the United States and to be able to seek opportunities. So, the first lesson that I'd like to leave you all with here today is to strive to learn something new and to commit to being a lifelong learner. And that does not just extend to formal education. In fact, one of the 6 categories that we'll be honoring tonight is academic achievement, which recognizes a level of intellectual curiosity, critical thinking, and a commitment to learning. For many of us, becoming a lifelong learner can be as simple as reading a new book or taking a certification class, but it's especially important to try to learn something new, especially in today's rapidly changing environment. Bringing it back to my grandfather, his decision to prioritize educating his daughters ultimately resulted in me speaking to you all on the stage today, which teaches us another very important lesson. Sometimes you have to plant a seed, nurture it patiently, and wait for it to grow. Many of the women who will be honored here today did not expect to be on this stage when they first started pursuing their passions. They simply had an idea, persevered patiently, and ultimately saw success in their endeavors. In our world of instant gratification and social media, people often want to see their results right away, but we learn an important lesson in planting a seed and patiently waiting to see the fruits of our labor. As I previously mentioned, I was fortunate that my parents moved to the United States as Ethiopian immigrants in the 1980s, like many of you, seeking better opportunities for their children. I was born and raised in Prince George's County, Maryland, and later my family moved to Northern Virginia, where I finished my public school education. During my junior year of high school, I enrolled in an advanced history course, which required a lot of reading and writing. And one day after my class ended, my teacher asked me to stay behind so she could talk to me about my assignments. And she began to ask me a series of questions that still remain imprinted in my mind like it was yesterday. Lena, she said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Here." And she said, "Were you born here?" And I said, "Yes." And so she paused and she played with the paper and she said, "Well, you write like someone who wasn't born here." And so my eyes kind of widened in disbelief because I was confused by what she meant. And so she proceeded to tell me how I should focus more on my writing, and so I said thank you and I went to my next class, but I was just very confused. It was in that moment that I felt that my writing wasn't good enough, and by extension, I was not good enough. And so I questioned my decision to enroll in that honors course when I could have just taken a regular history course. But little did I know at that time that that teacher inspired the drive within me to push myself even further and to challenge myself academically. I kept her advice in my mind when I was submitting my assignments, always checking for grammar mistakes, and her words resonated with me when I wrote my college application essays. And years later, I gained a deeper understanding of her comments when I published an article in my graduate studies on linguistic discrimination. Linguistic discrimination is the unfair treatment of someone based on their language or dialect. Linguistic discrimination is a form of prejudice and inequality that can have profound impacts on an individual's opportunities and sense of self-worth and self-esteem. That brings us to the second lesson that I wanted to share with you all about resiliency. Sometimes when you face an adversity or a setback, it's important to bounce back and keep moving forward despite the obstacles that are being put in your path. I often reflect back on those questions that I was asked many years ago, and I don't think the teacher had any ill intention towards me, but I think that she was put in my path to challenge me and to push me and to motivate me to keep moving forward. Setbacks often cause us to reflect on our experiences and develop new skills to continue to contribute to our own professional development. Over time, it causes us to be more persistent in achieving our long-term goals and develop the confidence to face and overcome many obstacles that were put in our path. Setbacks remind us that life is not linear. Sometimes it'll be up and sometimes it'll be down, but change is a part of life. Growing up with Ethiopian roots, I believe we all have a responsibility to look after the mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being for one another. I grew up watching my parents, especially my father, dedicate a lot of his time to the First Hijra Foundation, a nonprofit organization serving the needs of the Ethiopian Muslim community in the Washington, D.C. area. I attended the youth programs at the First Hijra Community Center, and as I grew older, I became an advisor, mentoring and planning events where Ethiopian youth could gather, make friends, and foster a sense of community. Shirley Chisholm was the first African-American woman who served in the United States Congress in 1968, and she famously said, "Service is the rent we pay for the privilege of living on this earth." And this quote inspired my desire to pursue a career in public service where I have spent the last 8 years of my career. I've worked in human resources, developing a talent pipeline into federal service to ensure the next generation of leaders look like us. And I have also worked in a program evaluation capacity, examining the performance of federal programs and made recommendations on ways to make more efficient and impactful changes to some of our nation's most pressing issues. But looking back, a career in public service didn't always come easy. In college and graduate school, I looked around and saw very few people that looked like me. To many people, I looked foreign in a career dominated by white males who had dreams of running for public office. And that's when I realized another important lesson: the importance of stepping outside of your comfort zone. I didn't have a lot of mentors or role models who worked in politics, and so I knew if I wanted to succeed, I would have to try something different. And so when I was in college, I constantly attended networking events and asked people to set up phone calls where I could interview them about their career, and I wasn't sure if they would respond to my emails. It felt very unnatural to send random emails, but for every 10 requests I sent, I got one response back, and from those conversations, I was able to learn lessons that are still true today about life and career. Looking back at my academic and professional career, there are several instances that come to mind where I actively chose to step outside of my comfort zone rather than choosing the safe option. For some people, that may include public speaking or choosing a non-traditional career path, but when we push ourselves to go beyond our comfort zone, we take risks and ultimately become open to newer experiences that allow us to learn more about ourselves. In 2024, I am still learning so many new things about myself. And one of the more recent examples of stepping outside of my comfort zone came when my husband and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, after I'd lived in the Washington, D.C. area my entire life. And for many of you, leaving your family and friends in Ethiopia and moving to the U.S. was likely a time period filled with adversity and reflection. But those experiences are essential to embracing discomfort and uncertainty and opening ourselves up to a world of possibilities in order to become more resilient women. So, we have an exciting program for you this afternoon. So in closing, let us remember that as Ethiopian and Ethiopian American women, we possess the strength, the resilience, and the power to overcome any obstacle we encounter. Together, we can break down barriers that stand in our way and challenge the stereotypes that seek to define us and forge paths of opportunity to inspire future generations. Let us remember that our strength not only lies in our individual accomplishments, but in our collective spirit. Amazaganatlo.